Okay, maybe let's set the scene by talking about how the industry has worked so far, right? All major owners and managers have worked with what we call a backbone system, right? You have we call them PMS systems. You're operating one of them, and looking at PMS systems, you could say that basically nothing has changed in the last 10, 15 years, in a sense that AMS systems, particularly by the people who run it, and that is the technical teams in the ship management or ship owning companies that never want to change. They use it as their diary to do certain technical maintenance on the ship to keep them running, right? PMS systems have always been only an historical extrapolation of what has happened, and you hope to know what will happen in the next months. However, data and clean data has never been probably used. And PMS systems have also been very insular. When you try as an owner to negotiate with your PMS maker to open them up with APIs for other functionalities, generally you meet a lot of resistance because you have the computer printer approach. Yeah? You sell the printer cheap and then you earn your money on the cartridges. I'm not talking about your company, but in general, that's how this PMS world has been elaborated. And there's also another thing. There was never really a concern about really making things better. When you talk to a technical manager, what is your biggest problem? Then he says 80 to 90% of the data inside the system, the database for inventory, for example, is wrong. And that means that if you put in a service job, you never know what you have, so you order it again. Or you have delays and shutdown times, but somehow or rather the industry has never attacked these kind of things. So my question is really, how can technology help us to get really better? And would you agree that while the ship owners and managers, they want to have what they call the single source of truth, and single source of truth is meant because the superintendent, as a custodian of the budget, he wants to see where does he stand on his OPEX across the year? How can he plan maintenance? How can he be responsible for cost? By the way, the second thing that technical guys will always say, my second biggest problem is the logistic cost that always go out of whack. So these are two central questions. So the question to you also as platform operators, how can you help to explain to this reluctant industry to adopt modern ways of thinking? And can you give me one or two use cases that you see how we can make it better? And I also need to say that except for the PMS system manufacturer, you have to integrate with client systems and the single source of truth. What is the biggest blocker that you see, and what is the biggest chance that you see? If you would start to elaborate on this.
Well, the biggest blocker, I think, is that there ain't a single source of truth, because there are two single sources of truth, or two pieces of master data, one on the buyer side and one on the supplier side. And this is where we, as the guy in the middle transferring data between the two systems, see the obstacles in agreeing what is the right data and the quality of the data, because also products changes. So it's a product may be true one day, but 2 months later it has been upgraded to another product by the supplier, and then suddenly the data on the buyer side is obsolete. So fortunately, there are different means of aligning these data flows, and with the help of AI lately, but ProcureShip has been doing that for many years, and I think my colleagues here is the same, that using other technologies to try to align the data and keep the data flowing is an example where we can justify our existence. And the second one is on the pure connectivity to the supplier, where, as you rightly said, Peter, in the beginning, this is where the PMS systems have maybe failed to invest enough, which is luckily for us here, because this was where we started 20 years ago, connecting suppliers and making a better connectivity to suppliers from the procurement module within the PMS system.
Okay, I have to jump in there before I give to Michael. Out of my personal history in my last ship management company, when we decided for a new PMS system, we insisted on 14 implementations of best-in-class solutions. And the PMS maker hated us for this, because it proves them every time that they're not good enough in that. For example, supplier onboarding, risk KYC, none of the systems has a possible solution. It's all manual Excel systems. We're talking about proper contract price module inside with multi-port facilities, not existing. We're talking about visibility of logistics and the cost up to the ship and visibility for the ship, not existing. We're talking about reasonable catalogs. You may argue with me on this one, where we have contract prices, quarterly order templates, where we have order splitting, which you hate, and visibility on the whole supply chain side. So the enablement of the vessel as a decision maker is simply not there. And the low-hanging fruits are so crazy. If you look at technical consumables, for example, 3% of your OPEX, it takes 50% of procurement time and fiddling of superintendents thinking about how many brooms a ship needs. So this is, of course, a low-hanging fruit, which so far we have not been able to handle, and that is very obvious that there should be solutions. Michael.
Yeah, and I could be inclined to say that there are solutions out there that can solve some of this, but I think the single source of truth is an interesting discussion, because it was simply not possible earlier, because it requires connectivity on the vessels. And this has been one of the biggest obstacles in many, many years. We all know that this is moving now fast, but it has been a big problem. The information flow and the single source of truth has to be accessible for the vessel, for the office, for the supplier, for external parties who need access to this. Connectivity is changing that. And then you asked a lot of questions, Peter. I'll see if I can remember them all. But one thing I find is actually the biggest problem in this, and I think you will agree, that's us, or you, not the digital providers, because we are thinking about this every day. It's our life. But I think we need to change the way we think about this as something which is there now, not something that is coming, or perhaps coming. Someone is working a little bit on this here and there. It is there. And every solution out there, being Procureship or ShipServe or Source to See, whoever is creating these platforms, the solutions are there. Just has to be embraced. I said the same in Hamburg in April. So I think this is really the biggest problem. It's not the money side of this. It is really the mindset that has to change.
You're right, Michael. But on the other hand, if you look at the purchasers, they have a system and they're working in that system, and suddenly you say, okay, that system is not good enough, but it's still the core of how they daily work. And then we come with another system, and then suddenly you are faced with a challenge to try to work in two systems in parallel. It's doable, of course, and we all have the solutions at hand, but also it's a big challenge for because now we're talking change management and we're talking training, and so it's not a technology challenge. It's more a change management challenge and a process understanding challenge, in my opinion.
I can tell you with confidence that owners, managers don't want to work on two systems, no matter how good your solution is. So you have to integrate. And this is also part of the problem for a lot of the PMS providers today. I'm aware of 6, 7 very, very large potential clients who have been looking at new PMS systems in the last 1 or 2 years. So they have gone through that process, looking at 10 systems, filtering it down to 5 or 6, then having 3 in the final evaluation round. And except for 2, all of these have basically said we are not going to make this decision now, simply because the systems have not made a transition from the historical view and extrapolation into forward-looking, performance-related, preventative maintenance. These are things that are separate systems today, used by the technical guys, and then they're not supported at this moment. So they're sitting and waiting for the next generation of cloud-based solutions that integrate everything with open arms at a low cost. However, I want to come back to what you said. One of the problems that we have is the lack of standardization. Also, IMPA doesn't like to hear that very much. We do not define well enough what is really used and needed. So most shipping companies still work with what we call free line items, right? So we had in our procurement processes 15-20% free line items requests, and ship chandlers know how painful it is trying to find out what the clients really want, or the ships rather. And as long as you do not specify exactly how to categorize these items, you never have historical use cases, and you cannot also plan for the future, I think, right? So the only solution that we had proposed was to have a storekeeper on board, which we couldn't get. We will get less people on the ships. So I think we have to think about how do we digitalize the storekeeper in a safe way. And secondly, we needed to see how we converted free line items into actionable things. So we had a chief engineer in my office sitting in the middle of all the purchases, and he was converting those requests into catalog items or one-time purchases. So what I'm saying is you have to go step by step in improving this, but clean data is the new gold. Yeah. How important do you think is it that data platforms that support the technical conversion are independent, Mikael?
So I think the independence is supported by transparency around what you do. You can always look at platforms and their ownership and how they operate. Maybe there's an overweight of buyer ownership, supplier ownership, maybe some external parties. But I think transparency is really the key for everyone to accept here. And let's be very frank around it. There are many businesses in the industry around the platform who are not very interested in transparency for all sorts of reasons. I'm not going to mention any of them here, but this is reality. And we are providing transparency, which is something some companies almost per definition are opposed to. They want to avoid that. But I think the proof is actually in the time that goes. The time works for us here. That all the concerns that has been raised about being independent have proven not to be anything, right? That it's not an issue anymore, because if you're not independent and if you're biased towards something, you go to jail if you do something that's on the wrong path, right? And no one wants to risk that. So I think this is more talks than actual a real problem.
Can I give the mic to your neighbor?
Yeah, of course, the transparency is the default. It's I don't think it's about that. If you're looking into to challenges for us as an industry and procurement as part of that industry, I think one of the core challenges is that we are really small. That means that the money behind what we are doing compared to other industries and other departments within each of the buyer organizations is quite limited. And we often find most of the time that procurement is dependent on IT. We are driving IT solutions, and we are driving these IT solutions. Of course, with procurement at the steering wheel of these developments, but to a large extent also with IT sitting on the side, and I think that is also one of the challenges about the future of the processes in procurement? Is that going to be algorithm run with AI, or is it going to be continue to be a a department that is manned by professionals that actually know what they're doing and do understand their processes? Or do they need to understand the processes, or do they just leave it to AI to automate everything? I think that's something each shipping company has to make up for themselves. In what direction do they want to go? And before they do that, they need to really understand their own processes before they apply any kind of technology, because it's not a top down. It should be a bottom up, to identify where are your needs and then apply the technology, and not say, okay, here we have another AI solution from our e-procurement provider, and why don't we use that, and why don't we use that? I think that's a big mistake.
Thank you. Noel, in your view, when we technologically enable the companies, and I look back at my own history where I always had between 60 and 100 people either in Manila or Mumbai working on largely repetitive works. Is your system the end of the outsourcing model for the maritime industry? Well, you're right there. I see a well-known face, John Beck from Wilhelmsen, in the audience, and he remembers well that we worked on a standardization process where many of the large suppliers and owners worked together to look at the 60,000 items in the IMPA catalog and try to look at actual use data put together from all the companies. And we condensed the IMPA list to about 13,000 items that constituted 98% of your general utilization. And then across a lot of supply chain professionals, we rewrote the IMPA specification because it is without a quality description and clear description. And we also had a very special view on seafarer needs. So we said that two areas may not be compromised. One is safety, and one is crew convenience. Crew convenience as in bed linen, toilet paper, cutlery, crockery, and stuff like that. And safety items, you cannot have two different kind of quality levels for a hook or a harness. It's simply disrespectful. So I think you also remember that. Can you, with your organizations, basically go down that path and try? Is there a possible way to align interests of your larger clients? Can you create a wave and make that happen, especially for the crew on board, who, by the way, also never know what their owners have ordered for them? Or in other words, how much am I worth for my owner if he gives me that kind of shit? But quite often it's the suppliers that under-deliver on specifications that are not clear. Can you start?
Yeah, I can add a comment to this, this is not a sales pitch and so on. So I have to speak in very general terms. I think one of the areas where the industry is really not moving is that it's in a sense reactive. So when you look at the RFQ quote process, that's a reactive process. You don't really know what you want. Back to Noel's description about the unstructured, the supplier doesn't know what it is they're asking for, all this back and forth. But to turn that around and force the buyer and supplier side to sit down and agree what it is they want in a catalog. Yes, I say catalog because I think that is really a way forward. And there can be all sorts of reservations, prices fluctuate. Yes, there are systems that can handle that. Maybe they are your weekly basis, they need to be updated daily, 3 monthly, 6 monthly, whatever. That's possible to do today. Technically, not an issue at all. Systems and solutions are available. So I think it's about flipping the coin here and sit down, force yourself, buyer, supplier, to agree the catalog. And yes, it will not be complete. But guess what? There may be an extra line item feature where you can type in the ones that you would normally type in as RFQs. So you will get to a very high percentage of quality information with the right descriptions, images, prices, etc. So it's certainly possible, but again, it needs a change. You call it or we call it transformation. That's us that need to change our way of thinking about it.
Carsten and Dominic, please. Carsten first. Carsten first.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, catalogs is a good idea, but again, there you face the challenge with having a PMS system, and then you have companies like us or Shipsurf, because a catalog solution is normally part of the PMS system, but they are basically all not that good as opposed to ours, and probably also Shipsurfs, which are really, really good. But then suddenly you see that the PMS is fighting back at the e-procurement platform, because now we are suddenly moving into their space, which is managing data and catalogs. So that is what we have experienced, at least from Procureship, when we launched our catalog solution last year with automation and everything else. That some of the PMS systems were saying, "Well, why are you going into our space?" And we said, "That's because your system, nobody want to use your system because it's not good enough." So that's one thing. The other thing is catalog is not always this solution to everything. It's for some products is a good thing, but we see another new trend, which is you can call it near sourcing. So as opposed to deciding upfront one supplier with certain products, then we see some of our buyers saying we want to work with approved vetted suppliers for these categories in APAC, in Europe, and in the Americas, respectively, because we want to near source our products instead of just buying from one source and ship this screwdriver across the entire world, which is completely insane, than rather buy it locally in Bogota, whatever.
Yeah, of course. We had a company 2 years ago that tried to enter from the US with an Amazon kind of approach, and they came in and said, "We're going to conquer the world. We're going to disrupt everything." But we have to look at the realities, especially on the last mile basis. Like in my last ship management company, we had 145 active ports, right? You had 58 active or regular ports and 14 key ports, where I had to have contract prices in place of items that were comparable. So the complexity is, of course, extremely high. And the last mile element in terms of cost is also a logistic issue, where ship chandlers around the world are starting to realize that being a logistic company is the chance or guarantee for them for survival. It's no longer basically being the cleanup person for vessels that cannot plan. We had or most companies have more than 50% of their purchase orders less than 72 hours delivery time to the vessel, which is proof of the complete inability to plan. But it is not always the ship's mistake. The ship is not enabled. They don't have visibility. And I think with the ideas that we're discussing here, the perfect scenario is really to say to the vessel, this is your ring fence, this is your list of approved suppliers. In our key ports, we have contract prices agreed, and you have this budget here. You can see it on your catalog. You have your templates for quarterly orders in there. You can split, you can do whatever. And only if there's exceptions to the rule, then the superintendent would come in. The superintendents hate that. Because they don't like so much maintaining their vessels. It's very painful and requires a lot of work and traveling. So they like to fiddle around with mundane things, right? And I think shipping companies should finally find ways how to motivate them to stay out of that. Because as long as your vessel stays within that budget with approved suppliers, what can go wrong? Right? We entrust them with an asset of $100 million, and we think they can't buy brooms for $20. It's a perversion of thinking, in my way. Any thoughts?
Yeah, you're right, Peter. But that again also comes down to understanding what you are purchasing, what you're buying, and again the data inside the PMS system and even in some e-procurement platforms are not good enough to be organized and categorized, because this is where you starting understanding the process. What are you buying and where are you spending your time? And you see it's easy to consider comparing three screwdrivers, even though that it at the end of the day doesn't matter. So you may find yourself or your department spending most of your time on stores, which really doesn't mean that much. So again, I hope that we as e-procurement platform providers can help purchasers deliver more and better data quality in order for them to the purchasers to and purchase departments to segment the data and try to understand where are they spending most time and where are the biggest savings hidden. And I think we're getting there, and probably Mespas is on the forefront of that, I can imagine. Before that.
Yeah, there's also a big gap between dream and reality, right? For example, the large clients negotiate contract prices for 3,500 items, and then all the inquiries come in, and what happens is that you're required as a supplier to quote again. So it is absolutely horrible in terms of efficiency. So this is the low-hanging fruits where things can happen, and platforms definitely can cater for that because you can capture that. And also you can help to mitigate the element of risk. Yeah, you have IHM issues that you can communicate to a platform. You can go to supplier KYC questions and rate suppliers not only by price comparison, but also compliance to certain standards and having quality procedures and all kinds of codes in place, right? So I think this is areas where technology will probably bring us further. I think it's your... Yeah, that's horribly obvious. And the problem is really the change in mindset, especially on the client side, to let go of the old models. If you look at a future operating model, then you would probably think that clusters of owners of the new supply chain, and let's face it, there's new shipping companies, they're really exciting. I visited in Hamburg 2 weeks ago a company called Tailwind. It is a new ship owner that is basically owned by Lidl supermarkets. They were tired of having all the margins involved and wanted to be in full control of their supply chain. So it's a new reality. This will change the structure of shipping as it is. We'll ask different questions. And so I think something is growing there. And probably if you want to be a little bit looking into the future, I think what will happen is that clusters of clients or stakeholders will get together and put all their technical management, risk management, voyage management, performance evaluation, also procurement processes on a 24/7 platform where people handle standard cases, and then only if exceptions to rules have to be handled, subject matter specialists or OEMs will jump in. I think that is something which is already in the process of coming up, and it will change the way how things are happening. But very clear is standard business cases, 60 to 70% of the transactions will be subject to our new technology, and I hope that you are agile and ingenious enough to find the right solutions in that space. Also, we spoke about the importance of connectivity, which of course is one of the major drivers of this enablement, of course. And that is something where I can say with confidence that in the next 1 or 2 years, massive additional changes will happen. You know, I know now that Starlink, for example, from 2016, will offer a plan of unlimited connectivity for the first time in the maritime industry if you commit for 12 months at a price that is absolutely crazy with an hardware investment cost of $4,000. So that again will change how things are happening, and that practical example that you gave, how do we do things in the real world, you know, like ordering on the internet and so on, that will give us new opportunities. Do you think that the maritime industry will ever come to an Amazon situation? Can you give me your personal view? And will you help to facilitate that?
The answer is, of course, yes. Yes, yes, yes. I think it will move in that direction. And I think that it will take time, like everything does. I'll give you a little anecdote. When I joined ShipServe in 2000, we actually printed out RFQs on behalf of buyers. Then we stood in front of the fax machine. We faxed it to the supplier. We got the quote back. We typed in the quotes in our system so the buyer could sit back with the feeling of fully automated e-commerce flow, right? This is how we started. This is how everything starts. And this is also how we are moving things right now. So thinking about Amazon, yes, let's call it the North Star, right? A guide for us that this is what we are moving towards. But it will take time. And yes, as Carsten says, he doesn't agree with me. That's fine. Certain categories will be difficult, but why should it not happen? It's possible today with an interface on board to shop straight on a cloud-based solution. Why would this not be better and better and better as time goes? Of course it will. Of course it will.
I give you the chance.
Thank you. Yeah, so I totally disagree. I don't want to see Jeff Bezos making 35% of profit of everything that we do in our industry. And I don't want a centralization towards that because it doesn't do anything good to us at all. I believe in doing business with reliable suppliers that you have vetted and where you're working together to bring down the price because of transparency. And you know that the very good suppliers, they have a very close relationship to the buyers and they are working together because it's a teamwork. And the opposite of that is the Amazon thought, which I'm very much against for the reason I just explained.
But do you think that a smart system should suggest suppliers to buyers that are not part of their approved system, and where probably years of relationship and goodwill and experience are there? Is that your obligation to suggest better dealings on a global benchmarking scale?
In a location, but also price criteria, quality, delivery terms, payment terms, delivery process. It's really complicated to get into this. So a recommendation engine, I think, in certain situations has validity, but the relationships is not the way. Let's remind each other.
And let's face it, with all propensity that we have for digitalization, what keeps us alive, what keeps us going is people. That's why we're coming to IMPA, by the way, right? We're almost at the end of it. So I want to have a little bit of a challenge for you. So I'm giving you $2 million because I'm a VC fund and you're an entrepreneur in the supply chain field, and you're allowed with that $2 million to create your own startup. What service are you going to offer, Carsten?
Well, ProcureShip was a startup,
You,
and
you.
me, I would buy ProcureShip
For
because
$2 million.
no, not at all. I think it's slightly more expensive today, but I would start by teaming up with the fleet systems because the fleet systems are still the core of what the purchasers are using today, and try to find out if they want to play ball or not with me, and then identify the gaps that I can provide and which goes along and across the fleet systems out there, because if you don't have them on your side, then then these $2 million are very fast spent for nothing.
You know that the old investment rule is if you can't monetize it, it's not good enough, right? But
No,
anyway, so
exactly.
Mikael.
Yeah, I think one thing is for sure, I would not go head to head with any of the other platforms providers out there, because there's so much IP and knowledge about what they do that it would be too complicated to copy. So I think I would build a complementary.com. It's going to be called. So it will be all the services that we see as gaps from the systems, in a way an aggregator of information, and then use that as a data-driven approach where data becomes super important and is super important right now. So in a way, a complementary angle to the industry.
Can I co-invest?
Maybe.
Noel.
2 million. So probably my main focus would be where do I buy what price and three days.
That's where you should be today, but it's okay.
Unfortunately, that fundamental question still exists.
Okay, Dominic.
Yeah, I think in general, when AI come up, there was this joke that AI takes over the nice things of the life. For example, it's drawing my pictures. Instead, it should take care of my household. So it goes in the wrong direction. And I see, if you gave me those 2 million, I think also here in maritime industry, the software generates work. Instead, it should work for the user. And here there is quite a big potential that the software could support more with better. In a software, a lot of data is collected, but I want to know what the software recommends me to do, not to read all the data that is recorded there. And analysis and AI also there. So I think here those 2 millions would be invested well.
Good luck. I would probably go to the beach, but yeah, we have just probably time for one or two questions. If there's anything from the audience, is there anyone with a microphone just in case? Then it seems that we have answered all the questions of the maritime industry of today regarding digitalization, and I would like to thank the very diverse panel. Where are the ladies? Alexander, we have to talk to him. But anyway, you did a great job in defending your business case. Keep struggling. Have a good day, everybody.